Hi kids, it's Mr. Hajdukovic. We're here with chapter 13, practice lesson 1, bar graphs and line plots. We're going to be making bar graphs with scales. The picture graph shows the number of each kind of kite some students made after school. The scale is down here. Actually, that's not the scale. Hold on, I got to reset here for a second. The scale is actually over here, down at the bottom. And so the scale is on the actual graph. This is called the key, okay? And it's actually written right here, so that was a little bit silly of me. But this is called the key. So I'll zoom into this and we'll take a look at it. We'll explain some things and then we'll go from there. And there's a few things you need to know about collecting data, and we'll do this for science too, because data collection comes in both science and math, and the two are connected, they're interrelated. So the first thing I'm going to tell you when you're collecting information, which is really what graphs do, is you need a title. Okay, you need to inform whoever's looking at your information what you're charting, because if you don't do that, people are going to look at a bunch of kites and say, well, what is this? But here you can see kites made by students is clearly labeled. And then each kind of kite that was made by students is also labeled off to the side. So you have fish kites, round kites, butterfly kites, and bird kites. Okay? And down here in the key, it tells you that each one of these kites stands for one kite, or one student in this case. So this is Billy's kite, this is Sally's kite, this is Olivia's kite, this is Tommy's kite. Each one stands for a kite that some child made. So when you go down a little further, it says Talia used the data from the picture graph to make a bar graph. And that's what you're going to be working on. Specifically, how do I take this information that I put together and put it in a graph that's easy to read? Because if I just take that information and I were to look at you and say, okay, I want to share with you what kinds of kites kids made in my classroom, and I looked at you and said, Tommy made a fish kite, Alex made a fish kite, Sally made a fish kite, Billy made a fish kite, Olivia made a fish kite, Robbie made a fish kite, and I just listed all those off, you're not going to be able to keep that all in your brain. So we draw pictures of it to sort the information so it's more clear and easy to read. That's exactly what a graph does. Okay, they're designed to make things easier to understand. And I just wrote that off to the side. You can write it on yours, or you can just leave it in the video. It's up to you. But we use graphs to make information we collect easier to understand. It says Talia used the data from the picture graph to make a bar graph. Bar graphs use these vertical bars to show how many kids did what. So over here on the scale, you have 0. No children made this kind of kite. 2 kids made this kind of kite. 4 kids made this kind of kite. 6 kids made this kind of kite. Okay, and you keep going up the scale depending on the information you have. So yesterday we counted and we said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids made fish kites. So we drew our line at the 6. We boxed it in. And then I told you don't have to color these in completely, as long as it's clear that you can see my bar goes up to 6 kids. So when I do fish, it's 6. And this actually, I kind of put this off over here. It should be right above the fish. So I'll make that correction quick. Okay, so all I did was I took my bar and I moved it over so it's directly above the fish. And so there's no way of confusing, well, what is this bar representing? It's right above the fish. Round kites are already recorded for us. There were 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Butterfly kites, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 again. And so I'll take my bar and I'll go 6 up. for butterflies, and then I'll color that one in. And then bird kites, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so I'll take my bird kites and I'll go all the way up to 8. And then I'll color that one in. And the reason, again, we use these is it makes information easier to understand. Because if I listed everything out but like I did before, okay, and I had a quick call there, so I kind of forgot where I was. But if you look down at the bar graph that she completed again, the bar graph does have a title, okay? It also labels what we call the vertical axis, right? The vertical axis is where your scale is. And then it labels the horizontal axis, okay? So it tells you this is how many kids made kites. This is what kinds of kites they made. And those things have to be labeled. Otherwise, people won't be able to read the graph. Those are the big kind of pieces of things for now. So we'll go ahead and go on to the next page. On this page, we're not using a pictograph to collect our information. We're just using tallies, and that's perfectly acceptable too. It said Alice went to a bird park and saw 5 kinds of birds. She recorded the number of each kind of bird she saw in a tally chart. Complete the tally chart. So they have pieces of information here. Names of the birds, the tallies that she made, and the number of birds. So if it doesn't tell you one piece of information, like it doesn't tell me number of birds, I can get it from the column next to it. So I can look at my tally marks and say there's 5, 10, 12 eagles, and I can write that in. And then I can look at the number of birds she has listed for ostriches, and I can go back and make my tallies there. So I would just make 2 tallies there. For parrot, peacock, and penguin, go ahead and fill in those tallies or those numbers, and then we'll go to the next page to complete the graph that she had. So here is our data, the information we're collecting, and here we're actually presenting it to someone in a way that makes it easy for them to read. And if you're back, you can see that I put 6 tallies by the parrot. The peacock, I put the number 4 in number of birds, and the penguin, I have 14 tallies. And just in case you forgot, most of you didn't, if I'm going to 5 tallies, I do 4, and then I slash my way through to make 5 so that it makes it easier to read. It's easy to count by 5s rather than just make a bunch of single tallies and then I can't count them as easily. So if you forgot that, just make sure you do that. And then we're going to go over to our graph. It says, complete the bar graph to show the birds Alice saw. Eagles, she saw 12. You can see here, it doesn't tell you, but your scale is going in 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. What you need to know is 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. Those are all still there. They're just not written out. So if I were to write them all out, it would look like this. But people who make graphs do this to save time. Okay, so the odd numbers are still there, but people do it this way to save time for them in making their graphs, and or because if you look back at our data, there's no odd numbers here. So there's no reason for me to have 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and so on listed. The other thing I'm going to tell you about the vertical axis is you can see the graph goes up to 16. There's no reason for it to go any higher than that because the most penguins, the most birds I have is 14. So I don't need to make my graph all the way up to 100 because I only have 14 that I'm listing. And if I made it all the way up to 100, my bars would be teeny tiny, and I want to make my graph easy to read. So I'm going to go ahead and start filling these in. You can pause the video and get your graph filled in, and then we'll go down to the bottom and answer questions. Then we'll be all done for the day. And so when you have your bar graph completed, I have eagles, ostriches, parrots, peacocks, and penguins. It should look like this, okay? And the tops of these bars, again, if you were to draw a line all the way over from the top of my penguin bar, that should be at 14 because I have 14 penguins. Okay, so that's how you read that and that's how you decide. So if you want to know how many peacocks there are, you just take the top line and you trace it all the way over. There's 4 parrots, top line, there's 6, and so on. What is the scale used? We talked about that a little bit. They're going up by 2s. So your scale is 2. What is the greatest number on the vertical axis? Vertical means up and down. Axis is this line here. So this question is asking what's the biggest number on this line? And if you go all the way up to the top, you'll see that it's 16. And then it says explain why. Why is 16 the greatest number? And we talked about that a little bit before. 16 is the greatest number because I don't need to go higher than 14. If I stop right at 14, my graph might look kind of funny because there's the end of it. So usually I add 1 space above. But if I went all the way up to 100, then my bars are going to look super small because my graph is going to be huge. So I just want to make my graph about the same size as the number of birds that I have. Otherwise, it's not going to be easy to read because the biggest thing is making it easy to read. So I'll write in my answer here. You go ahead and write in your answer in your own words here also. Pause the video, write it in, and then come back and check your work one time. If you don't have the exact same words as I do, that's okay. And so to summarize that, I just cleaned up what I said a little bit, and I said the greatest number is 16 because the largest group of birds Alice has, which is penguins, is 14. So I don't need anything more than 16. All right, kids, that's it for today. That's about 12, 13 minutes. So go ahead and put this back in your binder or keep it somewhere safe because we will continue to use it next week. And I hope you have great weekends. Thanks, everyone. Bye.